teleprompter tomorrow night.
Hey, everybody. I am Chris Cuomo. Thank you for joining me here on NewsNation. The Harris-Walz team is at another enthusiastic rally in Detroit. If something super interesting happens, I'll go to it. But I have some food for thought for you, okay? With Governor Walz being picked, there's all this yap about who's going to win. Who wins this election is not the right question right now. What will decide this election? That is the key question. And I think it comes down to independent voters and what they are willing to pinch their nose for. A bad man or potentially bad policies. Now, both of those conditions, one that's bad for the right, one that's bad for the left, can be argued as true or false and certainly as a matter of degree. And that's what the preceding months will be about. What we know is this. Incumbents usually win re-election. What are the numbers? I think it's like 11 out of 46 failed to do so, okay? We haven't had one fail since George H.W. Bush over 30 years ago. But there are two buts at play in this election that matter. Harris is not the incumbent. Biden is. And the national atmosphere is one of real dissatisfaction with government, with each other. There is legitimate fear about what is to come. Now, that is bad for the party in power, the Democrats. Think whatever you want about Trump. Do not miss this point, which is why people may choose him. You cannot dismiss people who are considering Trump as simply stupid or uneducated. That makes you stupid and uneducated to a very important fact. There are plenty of people just like you who may vote for Trump, and it's not because they love him. It's that despite not loving him, they feel the policies his party would bring to bear are better. And in fact, many are additionally angry because they feel forced by Democrats to back someone who is flawed because the left is so out there on policy. Now, is that justified? Depends on who you're talking about and what policies you're talking about. That is what is motivating the race to define Governor Walz, is exactly this proposition, is how can this ticket be made to look? So we need to look at what Walz really represents as a reflection of what Harris and the Democrats want to do, and also what is not fair as a suggestion about the Democrats. First, J.D. Vance coming at the Harris plane and press pool should not be dismissed as a mere stunt. It was a smart move. Harris has to do a lot more explaining to the media, and the media needs to demand it. So I'm not saying that what Vance did was just a stunt. It was a protest, and he's right to call out that the honeymoon needs to end because there are too many problems to allow mere platitudes on either side. This election makes us all losers if it's just make America great again and Harris is a radical versus we're never going back and Trump is the worst human. We lose if that's the contest. So let's look at what matters with Governor Walz as a reflection of the Democratic ticket. Now, the first allegation that's getting the most attention is about his character. I believe it means the least to your daily life, but it is getting all the buzz because the media prefers the personal attacks. So the allegation is this. Walz did not serve honorably. Here's J.D. Vance.
When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him.
All right. Vance served in Iraq. He deserves respect. I hear the criticism that Vance wasn't really a warrior. He was a reporter. Look, the service stands, okay? I reported in Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, other bad places. I wish it on no one. And he did it a lot more than I did. But Governor Walz has a pretty impressive service record. He was in for way longer than Vance, to the extent that that is relevant. He retired at over age 40 before there was word of deployment to Iraq for his troops. Of course, the war was going on. Troops were being sent regularly. So it is fair to suspect that he could have assumed he was going to go. Now, I qualify at that many layers. Why? Because he hasn't said that. And there's no proof he left to avoid war. And even if Walz had left early at over age 40 because he didn't want to go to war at that age and stage, Didn't former President Trump avoid service altogether in a less than honorable way? So I'm not impressed by this line of attack. But here's the problem for Walz. My answer is better than his. Governor Walz would never insult or undermine any American service to this country. In fact, he thanks Senator Vance for putting his life on the line for our country. It's the American way. The problem with that is he ducked the allegation. Not good. That's all buzzy, but I think it matters least to us. Now, the next does matter. Listen to this.
They make an interesting tag team because, of course, Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020, and then the few who got caught, Kamala Harris helped bail them out of jail.
Now, look, I covered it, okay? It was a mess. Leadership was absolutely an issue, but the situation was also not going to be easily controlled, if at all. Kind of like January 6th. Fact. Governor Walz waited a day before sending in the National Guard. Whatever the reasoning was, it was a mistake. But the suggestion that Trump knew Walz screwed up and saved him from angry protesters, and it was all so terrible, doesn't fit with what Trump said at the time. Listen.
I know Governor Walz is on the phone, and we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. I asked him to do that. What they did in Minneapolis was incredible. They went in and dominated, and it happened immediately. Tim is on the phone now. Tim Walz, again, I was very happy with the last couple of days, Tim. You called up big numbers, and the big numbers knocked them out so fast it was like bowling pins.
Now, look, I don't love the characterization that the former president was using from people who had very legitimate grievances. And of course, a lot of them went from protesting to become rioters. And the line is really easy. As soon as you touch person or property, you become what you oppose. You become lawless. But you heard him talking about Walz, right? Now they're painting it a totally different way. Why? Cheap politics. Now, Walz is also nailed as wanting to defund police. He didn't do that. He did change rules for how they can restrain people. He's also cast as the abortion right up until the kid is born guy. Is that fair? Well, he did fight for a no-limit law on when a woman can exercise her reproductive rights. Minnesota is not the only state that does this. You got 6 other states in Washington, D.C. that don't have a defined limit on abortion. Now, I have 2 problems with this attack. The first one is that Trump is on the wrong side of this issue from women. And it could be his undoing if women decide to act on having a right denied them by exercising another right, the right to vote. Second, there is a gross deception at play here, okay? That is the idea that women have abortions late into pregnancy if they're allowed to. Google it. You will see how absurdly rare third-term abortions are. They are less than a fraction of 1% of the procedure overall. And even then, you will see that they are for major medical emergencies, not convenience. That's why a lot of the pictures you see online of alleged abortions showing a fully formed baby getting torn apart are often fake. In 2022, 1 woman in Minnesota got a third trimester abortion. In 2021, 1 woman in Minnesota got a third trimester abortion. The procedure took place outside of Minnesota, but who cares? Okay? This doesn't happen. It is a boogeyman issue. Now, the Democrats' arguably weakest domestic issue is not a boogeyman. Immigration. You can make it one, but it's a real problem. Walz is like Harris in extending opportunity and privileges to migrants, even if entering illegally. Now, there are 18 other states, in addition to Minnesota and Washington, D.C., that allow for undocumented migrants to get driver's licenses. There are policy arguments for and against this, but it's certainly disliked by many, including some independent voters. Another hot button is the idea that this ticket represents unleashing trans rights. Walz, as governor, passed equal access rules regardless of gender identity. Is that radical? 15 other states and Washington, D.C. also have, quote, shield laws. They simply protect recipients and providers from civil or criminal charges for getting gender-affirming health care. Now, here's the debate. When should that care be available? At what age? And to what extent? That is a fine debate to have. And the idea that, no, it's not, it's always whatever they want, whatever the kid wants, whatever the family wants, I don't agree with that as a political argument. So we should have it. But the idea that Walz is radically dangerous because of what he passed, I don't know. I don't know that that's fair. Is he more aggressive on some issues? Yes. Like what? Phasing out fossil fuels. Yep. He wanted to go clean energy by 2050. And is that too aggressive? I don't know. It's 25 years, but we're certainly not ready for it. The infrastructure isn't ready for it. The Democrats have been way too aggressive on this issue from where we are as people and as our own potential. Did Walz have a hotline to let people report businesses not complying with COVID restrictions? Yeah. Now, it's being played as a neighbor-on-neighbor snitch line. That's not what it was. And the rule wasn't unpopular at the time, but it didn't age well. Here's a big one. Is he a socialist? Does he want socialism? He did say something that I believe is politically foolish. He said one man's socialism is another man's neighborliness. Now, look, I get what he means. There are a lot of programs and operations that have socialistic features in our society. Entitlements, public education, food stamps, Section 8, housing, the VA. These are all collectively sourced programs for the benefit of some. I would argue the corporate bankruptcy laws and the bailouts of the banks were highly socialistic. But here's the point. Despite the reality, you use the word socialism or socialist and make it seem okay, you got a problem in American politics right now, and Walz asked for that. Here's my point. We have to keep this election as much as we can about the realities of the policies of each side. That is what is good for us to debate, disagree about, find consensus on, act on, vote on. The problem is the parties pay lip service to this condition, but then go personal and in a battle to the bottom because it's easier than arguing policy. And frankly, it works better. So I've set the table. Now let's ask each side what they think the state of play is and why they believe it benefits them. First, on the Republican side, co-chair of the Republican National Committee, Lara Trump. Lara, thank you for joining us. I hear your voice is no good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been doing a lot of interviews, Chris, but I didn't want to miss this with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Lara, if it's just from talking a lot, fine, that's the job. But I will call you after the show. If you feel you're getting something, I'll give you my doctor. I had that. And she gave me a protocol that kept my voice going. But if it's just from yapping a lot, that's the job. So
a little of both. And I have kids, so everybody knows what that means.
Oh, boy. Petri dishes. Yeah. So what is your case for why the Walz-Harris ticket is not the right ticket for America?
Well, look, I think you're right. I think the American people deserve and they want to hear the policies of both sides. And I think the reality is, we actually have an opportunity to look back at 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House and almost 4 years of Kamala Harris as vice president now, and you can compare the two. And when Donald Trump was in the White House, I think it's hard to argue against how much better life felt, Chris, for so many people in this country, whether it's that people had more money in their pocket, they were finally actually putting a little bit of savings away. We certainly didn't have sky-high inflation. We had energy independence. We had low gas prices, a secure and closed southern border, or peace on the world stage. We weren't in any new wars. We actually had peace agreements in the Middle East. All of the things that are major issues right now for the average American were brought to you in large part by the policies of Harris and Biden. And unfortunately, we haven't had a great opportunity to hear from Kamala Harris. What is her policy going forward? It's hard to imagine it would differ that much from what we've already seen from them. It's been 17 days, Chris, since she announced she was the nominee for the Democrats. We haven't seen her in anything but a very scripted teleprompter state. We should be able to ask questions. That's why J.D. Vance went to her plane and her press pool today.
I'm with you.
I think we should I love the idea of talking about the policy. Donald Trump has a winning policy. I don't believe they have a winning policy on the other side.
Laura, I'm with you. Harris is new. She's out there, but she's been out there enough now. She has to start answering more questions. I'm with you. That's an easy sell to somebody who asks questions for a living. I ask your father-in-law to come on the show all the time. I'm sitting here all alone. So the invitation works both ways. Well, I definitely traded up in this interview.
There you go.
But, the former president is welcome here to answer questions. I think it would matter to the NewsNation audience. They're a very big independent group. So I understand you, and you are right. Now, part of this battle is the boogeyman, right? The boogeyman on the left is radical progressivism, right? The boogeyman on the right are fears about your father-in-law and what happens if he doesn't win. President Biden hasn't been talking much, but he took time to say this. Listen to this.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath.
Yes, it was a setup question for Biden to answer it that way. But what do you say to people who are concerned that former President Trump won't play by the rules of democracy unless the rules go his way?
Well, he didn't say it would be a bloodbath, just to correct President Biden. He was actually talking in that context about the auto industry, that it would be a bloodbath for them. They have these EV mandates they want to put in place, and that would be problematic. I think that's what he's referencing there. Look, my job at the RNC and our number one focus at the RNC, Chris, has been election integrity. You can argue whatever you want about the 2020 election, but there is no doubt that half the country, maybe more, feels like there was something off in that election. And it is integral to who we are as Americans, that we trust our electoral process. So our number one job at the RNC has been ensuring election integrity. We have trainings all across the country because we believe actually making people part of the process demystifies it. We want people in the room to have eyes on every time a vote is cast and every time a vote is counted. And we believe if every legal vote is counted come November 5th, Donald Trump will be president. Now, people, of course, try to argue about January 6th all the time. I understand that. Here's the reality. Donald Trump did leave the White House. Donald Trump, whenever, even despite the fact that he does not believe he lost that election in 2020, he left the White House. There will be no problem. It is my job to make sure that people who are voting for Donald Trump feel like their vote matters and their vote counts. And I can assure you, if he does not legally and legitimately win this election, there will be no problem.
And look, obviously there's recourse, there's ability to litigate. We've seen it before with both parties. I would push back and say one of the reasons a lot of people in the country don't believe the last election was a fair election is because what they've been told by your father-in-law and a lot of his people.
And what they saw, Chris, that was a very unique election. You had such a huge mail-in vote that came in. It was unlike anything we've ever seen. There were a lot of questions unanswered. And by the way, the legal challenges we had from the side of the Trump campaign were not thrown out based on merit. Those were thrown out by and large via clerical errors. And it's a shame because you don't want half the country to feel like, well, I don't even know if I can trust this process. We have such little faith in so many of our systems right now in this country. We need to get it back. And so we're trying to do our part. We have actually extended this offer to our friends across the aisle at the DNC. We would love to have them part of the process as well. We have not received an answer back on that to our open invitation, but it does still stand as well.
I'm with you. Look, we differ about why the mood is what it is. The lawsuits weren't successful. There's never been anything proven. Even the big name that everybody was throwing around about that had all the proof of all the affidavits wound up coming in court and saying they didn't have the proof. But I'm with you. We need this election to be safe and secure. This opportunity is available to you for the duration, no matter how your voice is, to discuss what matters to the American people. Laura Trump, thank you very much. I wish you well.
Thank you very much. It'll be better next time, Chris, my voice.
You sound great. And again, it doesn't have to be me. NewsNation has an open invitation for your father-in-law, the former president, and J.D. Vance whenever they want to come on. All right?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. So let's look at the other side. Walz Harris, too progressive, says the right. No, just right, says the left. They're very happy with this ticket. California Democratic Member of Congress, Maxine Waters, is a founding member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, a true warrior in this country, politically and personally, joins us now. Representative, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Well, good to see you. Good to hear this discussion. And I found some of the responses that you were getting were very interesting. Let me just say this. When you first started, you described about how unhappy people are, how concerned they are. But when I listened to the debate with Kamala Harris and with Walz, and he mentioned the word joy, and I thought to myself, that hit a spot, because I was feeling there was a cloud over this country. It was a feeling of people that something has gone wrong with our democracy, and the democracy is at stake. And more than just a few people were beginning to think about our democracy under attack when they looked at what was going on in the Supreme Court with the MAGA justices. Immunity. A president who said that when he was elected to office and serving, that he could go up on Wall Street and kill somebody or shoot somebody and get away with it. A justice who is involved now in not only, one, turning our flag upside down, and that flag means a lot to a lot of Americans.
It was his wife.
It was him and his wife. Let me tell you something. You're married.
Yep.
You don't just do whatever you want to do without questions being asked about having an opinion about it. So I don't buy that. I think he's a coward for putting it on his wife. He knew what was going on. And let me just say this. I do believe that there is some joy in the belief that we have an opportunity for transformation. What Trump has done to this country, the division, the divisiveness, January 6th, everybody knows that he was in the leadership of that. When we look at what they're saying that they're going to do to lead this country into the future, 2025, you're just going to up and get rid of the Department of Education? When they talk about getting rid of Head Start?
Well, he's running away from Project 2025. He says he doesn't know about it. It's not his.
He's right.
You got to give him the benefit of what he says, and then you got to prove otherwise.
You are very smart, and you analyze things very well. And I like the way that you do it. Sometimes it benefits the left, sometimes it benefits the right. But you're good on that. And and many people watching this know that he is good at lying. They counted 28 lies in the debate that he did. He's a liar. And so he did have something to do with 2025. You have the proof of that. You've got the receipts. All of those people who worked for him that are aligned with him are involved with the development of 2025. So I don't buy.
I hear the criticism. I gotta go because people are yelling at me because I talk too much. But I did want to ask you something.
I want to talk some more.
Well, Congressman, you're always You're always welcome here.
Give me the same time that you gave her.
You're always welcome here, Congresswoman. I will always extend the invitation. You are a leader in your party, and for good reason. I would ask. It's not fair to have somebody come into the race and immediately start going into the grinder. But now you're getting on 3 weeks. It's time for the VP and for, her new running mate to start answering questions, doing the different outlets, doing what you're doing right now. We need to get a conversation going in this country with the people who want to lead us. So I hope the VP comes to NewsNation. I hope Governor Walz comes to NewsNation.
She has been excellent. She's been doing a fabulous job in a very short period of time to transform from, the president of the United States, who's Biden, running. And then all of a sudden, have a new president, even though it was a vice president of the United States.
Yeah, not easy.
You can't get everything you want in 3 weeks.
I know.
And so give her a chance. Right now, what you have to say is she has conducted herself extraordinarily well.
It is going very well, better than expected. Better than expected. The crowd approval is better than expected. Right. But I'm greedy and selfish, and I want more access. So if you can make it happen, I would appreciate it.
You got to get more than you ask for because we've got the right candidate, smart, brilliant, career absolutely has been on the upward way to getting to the point that she is now.
I look forward to the conversation with the candidate and the VP candidate if he follows through and gets nominated at the convention, which we all expect. And you are always welcome. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, thank you for taking the opportunity.
You owe me more time, okay?
You got it. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Coming up, You just heard from the RNC and from a Democratic big shot, okay? I think the time was kind of almost fair. But anyway, now let's process it, okay? What does this ticket mean for the state of play? What direction are we going now? What are the next one or two things to watch for? Bill O'Reilly knows the game, and he's got something for you to listen to. Next. One of the things that makes this show different is that I will correct myself and we will correct others in real time. The team is working here. So my producer, Ben Norbitz, said, hey, you know, Maxine Waters probably had you with Trump in 2025. I say that he says he didn't know anything about it. So Ben finds that Trump was with the head of the Heritage Foundation. That's who did Project 2025. In April 2022, that's when the project was started. And after the plane ride meeting with the Heritage Foundation leader, Trump said that the Heritage Foundation was going to lay the foundation for his next term. So that is not a good fact for Mr. Trump if he wants to run away from Project 2025. Thank you, Ben Norbitz. Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly. I've been waiting for the big man's take on what the Harris-Walz ticket means for this election. What is your take, sir?
Well, you know, I don't want to bloviate. I'd rather have you ask me questions, and I'll answer them in a short way, because I know everything about. Yeah, but it's a long-winded thing. What does Chris Cuomo want to know about Walz? I know everything about him. What do you want to know?
Do you believe that Walz is an example of the part of the Democratic Party that is bad for America?
I'm not going to use the word bad. That's subjective. What Kamala Harris did was exactly what Donald Trump did. Pick somebody who's simpatico. Two peas in the political pod, if you will. Exactly what's happened. That's why Trump picked Vance. That's why Harris picked Walz.
Do you believe that he has positions that are uncommon for Democrats and uncommon for what Americans have an appetite for?
Depends if you're a moderate Democrat or a progressive left. So Walz's deficiencies are extremely high taxation. Minnesota, a rural state, only one big metro area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, is the fifth highest tax obligation. And these are farmers and small business people. That has led to an outgoing stream of residents. Big problem in Minnesota. The Minneapolis Police Department is 40% down from its height. They can't get anybody to work for them. Number one, he's a huge spender and taxer. Walz is. Number two is immigration. He wants to pick up health care costs for undocumented migrants. He's a sanctuary city guy. He is going to give them driver's licenses. That's way apart from what most Americans want, according to the polls. And number three would be abortion. You addressed it. It is true. Not many women terminate pregnancies in the late term. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be a law against it. There are only 3 countries on earth that allow late-term abortion like that: the Netherlands, Singapore, and Canada. That's it. There should be a law. He opposes any restraint, as does Kamala Harris. What else you want to know about Walz?
One little riff on that. The reason there's a difference between allowing an abortion in the third term and allowing medical procedures where the mother's life is at stake. You will find that in the countries that restrict...
Everybody knows.
Right, but I'm saying, but it's a meaningful distinction, Bill.
Look.
Because that's all he allowed for.
I see the point.
Okay.
But it has to be a certified mother is in danger, physical danger, by 2 doctors, and that's reasonable, right, and most people would support it.
Right. So I guess it's just playing with the radical. Why play with the radical label? Forget about the military stuff. You and I, we don't care about that much. But the radical label, why does Trump need it? Why does he need to go there? Why can't he just argue his policies are just better?
Because that's not who he is. He wants to demonize his opposition. He loves that. He loves to demonize. If there's an Exodus 5, he's going to be in it. He loves to demonize people, and he's going to demonize them as far left radicals, which you can make a case that they both are. The socialism comment, it's going to sink them. Because I believe that Walz is a socialist. I believe that he is in the Bernie Sanders jar, okay? That they want the government to run health care. They want punitive taxation on corporations, which, of course, would be passed on to the consumer. They want everything Bernie Sanders wants. There's no difference between Walz and Sanders and Kamala Harris. None. So Trump is smart to put them into that petri dish because that's where they belong.
Why do you think Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania wasn't the choice?
I don't think I know. Would you like to know why he isn't the choice?
Very much.
Cuomo. Okay. I'm putting on my Sherlock Holmes hat now, and you're Watson.
Ooh, high praise.
So the guy who really knows what's going on, and we discussed this before, is David Axelrod. Axelrod knows everything that goes on inside the Democratic Party. And Axelrod said today the truth, because Axelrod is essentially not a propagandist. 90% of the pundits on the left and the right won't tell you the truth. They're in the business of propaganda.
Fair.
Okay. So Shapiro was interviewed by Kamala Harris. And Shapiro went in and said, look, here's how I see the vice presidency, and laid out a list. Kamala Harris is a very insecure woman, extremely insecure, which is why she doesn't do press, which is why whenever she's caught and has to answer a question, she stammers and stutters and word salads. Very insecure. Walz went in to the interview and said, whatever you think, Madam Vice President, I think. Just like Vance did with Trump. Exactly the same thing. So Kamala, caught between a governor who she needed, Pennsylvania, much more important than Minnesota. And you would have a very hard time demonizing Shapiro as a far-left guy. Very hard. Her insecurities rose up, and she said, I'm getting the guy who's going to agree with me on everything. And that's who she picked.
It's interesting, because that's not why Biden picked her. So it's interesting that she did something that maybe Biden should have done for himself.
Bill O'Reilly, know why Biden picked her.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. He told you.
Biden picked her.
He told you why he did it. Bill O'Reilly, tell people to go to the website. What are they going to find there?
Okay, so I got word this week that my upcoming book, September 10th, Confronting the Presidents, take a guess on how many first-run books are being printed.
100,000.
750,000.
Wow, that is really impressive, especially in this day and age when publishing is such a tough business.
Knocked me out. We've already have 100,000 sold in advance. And if you want to buy one on BillO'Reilly.com, you'll get it first. So you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I don't care. But you should read the book, Cuomo, because it pertains directly to today in this election.
I will do, and I appreciate it.
There's a lot of things going on in that book.
I appreciate it, and congratulations on the advanced success. I'll speak to you soon. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Last night, I started raising questions about why it wasn't Shapiro. There were so many people around Harris who was trotting him out as he's gonna be the guy. You got to look at him. You got to look at him. Look how great he is. And all of a sudden, he's gone. Was it because of his stance on Israel? Was it because of his faith? Bill O'Reilly says it was because of what he said to Harris in the interview. I don't know. Journalist Mehdi Hassan, great thinker, great debater, said that it is a dumb smear to bring up his faith as having been relevant. Is it? He said, yeah, come on, I'll explain. Okay, he's next. Shapiro of Pennsylvania picked. Did it have anything to do with his position on Israel? Anything to do with his faith? Is it wrong to even ask? Let's bring in Mehdi Hassan, a great debater. Zeteo is the name of his new enterprise. I love the word. It means to seek in Greek, and it's great. Media company. Mehdi Hassan, former MSNBC host, I believe the best they had in the stable, joins us now. Mehdi, we got 5 good minutes. Explain to me your understanding of why Walz was the right pick and it wasn't Shapiro.
Oh, just to get to the point very quickly, Tim Walz is America's fun uncle. He's likable, he's charismatic, he's a great attack dog, he's a Midwest governor, he's done amazing things in his state with just a one-seat majority in the Senate, expanded child tax credit, expanded voting rights, secured abortion rights, gun control. He's a gun owner, though, as well, and a hunter. So he ticks a lot of boxes. He's what Democrats have been waiting for a long time, and he complements Kamala Harris very well.
Pennsylvania's more important. Shapiro is a star in the making. He was being trotted out as a favorite. What happened?
So, I can't believe you're making me do this, Chris Cuomo, but I'm going to agree with Bill O'Reilly for the first time in my life, who was on your previous segment. I'm going to take a shower straight after this, don't worry. But he said it right, that, Shapiro went in. He's very ambitious. I think CNN reported that he was overly ambitious in his interview with the vice president. Politico said that the vice president camp thought he was showboating. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that was the perception from the Harris campaign as reported by CNN Politico. Look, picking a running mate, you've got to gel together. You've got to have some chemistry. She had it with Walz. She didn't have it with Shapiro. As for winning Pennsylvania, there's no actual academic evidence that governors in swing states win races for you on the ticket.
True.
Now, let's just cut to the chase, Chris. The reason I'm here is because you were on Twitter last night suggesting to me that it has to be anti-Semitism. What else could it be? And I've just explained to you many reasons.
No. I didn't say it has to be.
To explain
I
to you
didn't say it
why
couldn't
it
be
was.
anything else.
Well,
it's
you
not wrong
suggested
to
it was
ask
that.
because the context, Mehdi. One.
Give me evidence.
Okay, here
Chris,
it is.
Let me turn it around. What's the evidence that it's anti-Semitism?
Here, look, I don't know that.
I haven't seen any.
I don't know that it is, but it's not wrong to ask, especially in this context. Your premise that he walked in there and they didn't like him, they already knew him. They were pushing him. They liked him. He wasn't so interested in it because he was afraid of what it would mean leaving Pennsylvania. She wanted him to come in. So contextually, I don't know that he could have just walked in and pissed them all off.
But that doesn't mean it was anti-Semitism.
No, now I got another piece. I got another piece.
Someone who doesn't.
I got another piece. I got another piece of proof.
Chris, let me jump. Go on.
Here's the next piece of proof. So they're trotting him out as the favorite. Then the far left flank starts calling him Genocide Josh. And all of a sudden, he starts getting all this heat from them about his position on Israel. And a lot of it was ugly on there that went way beyond his take on Gaza and seemed to be a reflection of his faith. And now you have Jewish voters in New York being split between Trump and Harris because of how they perceive it.
This is where I'm going to push back, Chris.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to push back here, Chris. No, you've got no evidence that any prominent leftist, any prominent Democrat mentioned his faith, cared about his faith. The article in the New Republic that laid out the case against Shapiro on Israel was written by David Cleon, who is a Jewish writer from New York. We're allowed to criticize his stance on Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Genocide Josh, it's very inflammatory. It's not a phrase I would use, but it's not anti-Semitic because, hold on, they call Joe Biden Genocide Joe, and Joe Biden is not Jewish. So it's not an anti-Semitic pejorative. It's a pejorative. It's not anti-Semitic. So even if they rejected him because they're worried about losing Arab American voters in Michigan, that's because of his Israel views, not because of his faith. J.B. Pritzker is the Jewish governor of Illinois. He has not said as many inflammatory things about Palestinians or campus protesters as Shapiro. I would have been fine with Pritzker. I wouldn't have been fine with Shapiro. So it's got nothing to do with his faith. It's insane for Trump and Republicans and others to suggest that this is about Judaism. The most senior political officials who are Jewish in this country are Democrats, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, all four Jewish governors in America. They're all Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. The only person who's ever run on a ticket for president or vice president who's Jewish was Joe Lieberman on a Democratic ticket.
Yep.
And by the way, accusing the far left of being anti-Jewish is so absurd because in 2024, a lot of the far left are going to vote for Jill Stein, who is Jewish, and in 2020, they wanted Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish. So let's stop the nonsense gaslighting and weaponizing of anti-Semitism for partisan aims.
I don't know that Bernie would like that you say he's Jewish. He would say he's culturally Jewish. Now he's agnostic. But Mehdi, the argument is well met.
He calls himself Jewish, Chris.
It depends. It depends. Mehdi, I appreciate you. Your arguments are well met and appreciated. I think that you got to ask questions, and it's good to have answers as well. Thank you for coming here to do it. We'll do it again soon. Mehdi Hasan, Zeteo Media. Great resource. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Up next. I'm telling you, I don't care if people agree or don't agree with me. If they're good arguments, if it gives you food for thought, that's the job. Do I have to agree? No, neither do you. Mehdi's a smart guy. I hope it benefited you. Now, a common concern. ISIS plotting to kill Taylor Swift. How real is it that Islamist extremism is looking to hunt us? Next. Was Taylor Swift targeted by ISIS? 2 men, including this 19-year-old who pledged allegiance to the terror group, are in custody. Explosives were found in the possession of one of them. As a result, Swift had to cancel all of her shows in Vienna. Let's bring in former CIA agent and former FBI special agent Tracy Walder. Last night we were talking, Tracy, thank you for being here, about Iran, but doesn't ISIS hate Iran? So what are the dots here to connect?
So I don't necessarily think that there are dots to connect between Iran and ISIS. Yes, they do hate each other, but the reality is might they come together for a common goal? This attack, in my opinion, has ISIS-K written all over it. It's a soft target and it's in Europe. So if we remember what happened in Russia just a few months ago, this is exactly something that ISIS-K would do.
Why is this happening?
I think, just what I talked about the other night is that this is just a matter of time. I think ISIS-K in particular is looking to make the most, if you will, bang for their buck. And I don't know that Taylor Swift herself was the target, but I think a stadium of 65,000 people was their target. And what's most disturbing to me is that there were chemicals. I worked chemicals and toxins at the CIA. Those can become aerosolized and do a lot more damage than what we can normally see.
Taylor Swift, though, you think that's a coincidence, or you think they're looking to attack icons of the left and the left any way they can? The West, rather.
I think it's more about icons, right? But I also think it's more about these large gatherings around these icons. A Taylor Swift concert, I've been to one with my own daughter, that is sold out. And there are more people than we would see at a normal venue at them. And I think that's why they targeted this.
So what matters that we're not doing or that we're not appreciating as a people?
I think part of the thing is, even when I went to the Taylor Swift concert here in Dallas, I was looking around, I was concerned about security, and I think it's important to always be vigilant. But I think it's really, really important to not be in a bubble, right? This is what the terrorists want. They want us to be scared. They want us to not enjoy these kinds of things in life. And so I think this is something that we really need to be vigilant about. But this was excellent intelligence gathering on the part of the Austrians.
What is the policy issue for the American government that is or is not being managed correctly in terms of the risk?
I think we actually are doing a good job. I think part of the thing that we are seeing is individuals getting into this country who are watch listed but are able to come in. So in my opinion, I think that is part of the problem. Individuals who are on known terrorist watch lists who are able to get in. And that may have been the case here in Europe, but I'm not sure.
Well, how do they get in? I mean, we just miss them, or is there some loop, like a loop around?
I think one of the biggest weaknesses here in the United States in terms of thwarting terrorist attacks is communication. Full stop. And I think the right hand isn't talking to the left hand, and they don't know that this individual is on a watch list with another agency. And that then doesn't make its way to TSA or border control or wherever they enter through.
Tracy Walder, thank you very much. Appreciate you. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Like certain questions. You got to answer them, okay? You can be anti-Israel's position in the Middle East vis-a-vis Gaza and not be anti